Are you in a bad reading slump, or have you ever been in one? Well, all it takes is a really good book to get you out. Today, I'm going to give you my top 10 books to get out of a reading slump, and you're guaranteed to love these books. First up is one of my favorites from the past few years, and that is The Little Liar by Mitch Albom. This novel literally takes you, gets a hold of you, and does not let go until the very end. In fact, you're going to be thinking about it long after it's finished. It's one that I continually recommend over and over to friends and family and have no hesitation with recommending, simply because everyone who's read it has absolutely loved it, myself included. One thing to keep in mind though is it is very heavy on the subject matter. It's set in World War II, and the main character accidentally ends up helping the wrong side. And so it's kind of their struggle with what's going on. It's told from many different perspectives, and the ending of this one will stick with you long after you've closed the book. Book 2 is one of my favorite recent reads, and that is Little Cruelties by Liz Nugent. Liz Nugent does appear more than once on this list, so just a heads up there, but for good reason. Little Cruelties is about a family of 3 brothers, all of which are kind of awful in terms of their personality and how they treat each other, and all we know from the very beginning of the book is one of them is dead. We get to hear the story and what happened from all 3 brothers' point of view, and it's definitely worth the read. This is one that I simply could not put down. And another one that's going to stick with you long after you've closed the book. Let's just go ahead and get the next Liz Nugent out of the way. It is Strange Sally Diamond. Aside from having one of the coolest titles I think I've heard in a very long time, it has one of the coolest plots as well. Sally is a bit of an outsider, and when her father dies, he gives her instructions that most normal people probably wouldn't follow, but Sally, of course, being a very literal person, does follow. He tells her to take himself out with the garbage and essentially cremate him in the furnace, and she does. Her neighbors, of course, find out, everyone finds out, and it is the biggest scandal. It's very chaotic, but we start to learn more about Sally's past and the past of her mother and other characters in this novel. It's absolutely insane. The twists and turns in every chapter, you simply will not see them coming. This is a book that'll definitely get you out of a reading slump. The next book is one of the best. It's The Island by Adrian McKenty. Now, The Chain is also really good, but I didn't put it on this list because it's a lot more in-depth. It does take a lot more to get into that story than The Island. The Island simply grips you from the very beginning and brings you along on this crazy psychological thriller of a ride. Imagine being on vacation in the Australian outback and things going terribly wrong. Well, that's exactly what happens. The characters in this story find themselves on the wrong side of an accident and trying to figure out how to escape with their lives. This high-intensity, fast-paced novel is sure to pull you out of a reading slump. Now, the next novel on this list is Heaven by Christoph Marzi. This is a bit of a different one compared to the others that we've talked about, and for good reason. Occasionally, you need something a little bit different than a psychological thriller to pull yourself out of a reading slump. This one has a bit of a fairy tale vibe, but it is set in modern day reality, if you can call it that. It's definitely got some magical realism going on. Our main character has her heart quite literally cut out of her chest, and we don't know why. We also don't know why she's still alive and living without a heart. But our 2 main characters in this book are on a quest to find out how this happened, why this happened, and really the mystery behind it all. I can't recommend this one enough because it's so far outside of the realm of what most people would normally read, but it is just such a fantastic novel. The next book is one that I read years ago but has really stuck with me, and it's one that if you're in a reading slump will probably get you out, and that is A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. This book is about a boy named Connor whose mother is seriously ill, and fair warning, it's probably going to make you cry. It's one of those books. But Connor deals with things a little bit differently. He has conversations with a monster who kind of helps him learn to cope, and it does so in such a cool, neat, illustrative way that I highly recommend getting the print copy of this one, simply because the illustrations are beautiful. Next, we have a book of poetry. It's Lvoe by Atticus, and this is probably one of my favorite poetry books of all time, not just to get out of a reading slump, but in general. It has some of the most unforgettable poetry that I have ever read, and I can't recommend it enough. If you're looking for something that's a little bit lighter on text to get you out of that reading slump, because sometimes that's what's needed, then definitely check out Lvoe. This Dark Endeavor by Kenneth Opel. This is one that, again, it's going to stick with you and it's going to grip you from the very start, but this is a retelling of Victor Frankenstein in a way that you've never heard before. Nobody has ever heard it this way. It's the life story of Victor Frankenstein growing up as a teenager and really how things come about. But I will tell you, what's so cool about this is you're getting it from his perspective, his brother's perspective, and then another character who plays a major role in the following book. If you love the first one, you're going to want to read the second one. So I highly recommend This Dark Endeavor by Kenneth Opel. Next, we have The Looking Glass Wars by Frank Baddour. This is another that's the start of a series. You can read the first one or you can read through the entire series. You're going to want to read the entire series after you finished it, I could almost guarantee. But this is a sci-fi Alice in Wonderland. You absolutely have to read this book. Just to give you an idea of what you're in for, the characters are so different from what you expect, but they still have the same base elements from the original story. So you've got Hatter Madigan, who is like this really cool guard of the Queen. And then you've also got the Cheshire Cat in this story, who is an assassin. So it takes the story that we all know and love and it makes it so much more crazy, if you can even imagine that. And the last one, this one is probably the weirdest out of all of them on the list, but it's going to get you out of a reading slump because it's so unlike any other story that I've ever read before. It's a quick one. It's not that difficult to get through in terms of the page count, but the content might be a little rough for some. It's Tender as the Flesh by Augustina Bastarrica. And I've got to tell you, this isn't a novel that's just going to stick with you. It's going to haunt you. The story is so terrible that you can't help but read it. It's set in the not so distant future where animal meat is contaminated. So anyone who wants to eat meat doesn't really have an option. The government has decided, of course, that it's now okay to eat humans, which, yes, they're essentially legalizing cannibalism. Humans are farmed, and then there's these certain human that are farmed just for consumption. And it's the story of a guy who works at one of these factories, and it is so difficult to read at times because of the content, but it's also one that I just couldn't stop reading. Something you can't really look away from. This story really shocked me at the end, as if the content wasn't crazy enough. Somehow the author was able to take that and make it not even the craziest part of the story. The whole plot leading up to the finale was just absolutely mind-blowing. Could not believe this book. And it's one that I have recommended to other readers who like the horror genre and kind of like psychological books, but it's not going to be for everybody, but it will get literally everybody out of a reading slump. So that's why it's on the list. You can't stop reading it once you start. Let me know down in the comments what you think. What is a book or books that got you out of a reading slump, or that you would recommend to everyone else watching this video to check out? Keeping up the momentum as a reader is super important, and I hope that these books are able to keep you out of a reading slump or get you out of one if you're already there. Be sure to check out the link down in the video description to get the absolute best price on any of the books that have been mentioned in this video. Let me know in the comments, have you read any of these? Do you plan on reading any of these? Do you have better recommendations? Give this video a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys later.